Welcome to Establish the Edge. I'm your host, Mike Leone, here with an exciting episode today. Going to be talking Dynasty wide receivers with Pat Kerrane. Really excited to have Pat on the show. Pat has famously won Best Ball Mania 3. Cool $2 million payday. And yeah, instead of, he's on the show Ship Chasing, which has been rebranded as Chasing Kerrane at this point. And Pat, super pumped for you though to have won that contest. And I want to talk to you over the course of this summer when Best Ball Mania 4 launches, pick your brain about strategies for that. Working on an article I'm going to turn into some podcast content about structuring your team for the playoffs, which is something you focused on a lot. But more importantly, Pat, that runway has kind of allowed you to start your own site, which is really exciting news. Love when people in the industry, good people in the industry are able to, flap their creative wings, for lack of a better term. And it is called legendaryupside.com. Very apropos content up on the article or up on the site right now, as we'll be talking Dynasty wide receivers. There's an article up called Don't Question Jaxon Smith-Njigba's Ceiling, Rookie Wide Receivers Tiers 1 to 2. Why don't you talk a little bit about legendaryupside.com, and then we will dive right into JSN.
Yeah, so right now on the site, I've got some rookie content. As you mentioned, I'm working on a second piece that'll be, the next wide receivers. I've got running back stuff in the works, going to be covering all the positions for fantasy, all the rookie stuff. Also doing some best ball articles. I had an article that came out Monday morning on Nico Collins, why I like him post Brandon Cooks trade. That's for free. So if you sign up, you get the newsletter delivered to your inbox, as well as just being able to check it out on the site. That's a free post. I did a free post on Tony Pollard. This has a big free preview, includes JSN, but there's also a 30-day trial. So if you want to check out everything, you can do it that way. And then there's also a $30 discount I'm running right now, early bird discount on yearly subscription. So you can snap that up if you want to do that. But yeah, we've been, there's a ton of reason to get up to speed on these rookies because we've got dynasty drafts coming up, and we also have best ball drafts that include the rookies. So I feel like, more than ever, you gotta know who these guys are, what the range of outcomes are.
Yeah, best ball is definitely changing the landscape in terms of how early we have to be prepped on these rookies. I haven't dove into best ball drafts yet. I'm mostly of the dynasty mindset, kind of prepping some trades and getting ready for my dynasty rookie draft. So that'll be the focus of this content, but Pat'll give some of his takes on, who he's actually taking in best ball drafts, and where we'll start with Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who you've got as your top wide receiver in the class. And Anthony Amico, who does our dynasty rankings, also has him as the top wide receiver in the class. In general, I guess zooming out, I said we'll dive right into JSN, but kind of zooming out, it is a little bit of a thinner class. In this article you wrote, you posted a link to a tweet from JJ Zachariason about how there's so many less guys popping in his model, both at the very top and then even the depth throughout the draft class. And we've been really spoiled with some wide receiver classes in general. So what should people expect from this wide receiver class overall?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's like a terrible wide receiver class. I just think the last three wide receiver classes have really been exceptional. They haven't quite been like 2014 level, but we've had three classes in a row that have been like in the ballpark of the 2014 class, just in terms of like how many really strong profiles that we had. So this is not that class. This is kind of more of a typical wide receiver class. So it's probably like it's going to feel like it's terrible because we're so spoiled from the last 3 years. But I don't think it's terrible. I think there's a couple guys, maybe probably three guys at the top who are pretty strong bets. I think JSN is a very strong bet. I don't think he's like, one of these generational bets that we get from time to time, but he's a really strong bet. And then I think there are some guys that have some warts and maybe aren't quite as exciting and kind of that like second round rookie pick type of mold that are going to be interesting to parse through. And maybe someone will get really good draft position that'll make them more interesting. So it's just kind of like, it's going to be a little hit or miss. I think it might be like the Amari Cooper draft class, or the Laquan Treadwell draft class, where we had like Michael Thomas in there. We had Sterling Shepard in there. There was like some guys that I think Will Fuller was in that one. So there's there's like, I think some of these draft classes where they're just going to be, there's going to be some busts probably.
Yeah.
And it's going to be harder to find some of these guys, but I do think this class will have some decent hits and there's definitely some really interesting profiles.
Yeah, I just know from a strategy standpoint, a lot of times I'm loading up on second round picks, like early second round picks for rookie drafts. And this year I've got like a rebuild team. And a lot of these second round picks, it's tough because I'm looking at running backs instead of wide receivers. And usually it's the reverse. And that's fine but like in a rebuild, sometimes it's tough to be using those picks on the running back position. So right now, we only have 2 wide receivers ranked in our second round of a Superflex tight end premium rookie draft. We do have a handful at the back end of the first round, but we'll take a look at all those.
I think that's probably the biggest issue with the class is that as it stands right now, there's not many profiles that I'm willing to bet on with the idea of like, maybe they fall around 4 or 5, but this is such a strong profile that I feel comfortable. Those guys aren't really there. I think it's, and I'm not sure how many guys actually get day 2 capital. It's not like a bunch of receivers look like they're really strongly in the mix for day 2. So I think that, once you get down to like, I don't know, after the top 6 or so, maybe top 7, it gets like, it really does fall off in terms of the depth.
Yeah. And you mentioned draft capital, which is like a huge input for anybody that's doing, prospect modeling. That's something that we look at. Anthony Amico has really good dynasty prospect profiles outlined for us on site. Within that, he also has an article titled like what to look for in wide receiver prospects, and just the draft positions up there. And you can kind of see, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, the hit rate in terms of averaging 15 points per game in at least one of the first 3 seasons for wide receivers. It drops like 10 to 15%, from round 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. So draft capital, really important. The age and experience, very important, both in terms of the age of the prospect, how many seasons they played, and like how old they were when they broke out is really important. I know, Pat, you've often looked at like the 3-year declare stuff, and we've got a few receivers. We've got some guys that broke out like as freshmen and were 3-year players. There's also, a 4-year guy that we'll talk about. So the goal is to kind of try and put all this information together. I definitely think the market's getting sharper with some of this stuff. It starts to become priced in a little bit. So it's becoming more challenging, but like in a fun way, I think, to kind of beat the market on where to rank these guys. And we'll finally circle back to JSN, and he's a guy that is a bit of an enigma himself, where he just had this really injury marred final season, and that leads to uncertainty, of course. But Pat, when he played with Olave and Garrett Wilson, who both look like studs at the NFL level, he put up pretty comparable numbers in 2021. I think they edged him out on touchdowns, but in terms of catches and yards, had similar production. And then he went absolutely ham in the bowl game when they weren't there. I think it was like 15 catches, over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. So what do you think about JSN?
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of JSN. I think he's a very strong prospect. I think he's in his own tier in this class. He was very productive in 2021. He had 1,605 yards. He had 9 touchdowns. He did not have a breakout season using a 30% dominator as the threshold, which is the typical threshold. But he was playing alongside Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson for much of that year. Actually, there was a narrative that, he's just a product of those guys. Like he's, kind of being able to get open because he's playing alongside those guys. He had all but one of his 100-yard games with both of them on the field until the Rose Bowl, when both were out, and then he went absolutely nuts. So then I've heard kind of the thing of, he only produced because he was playing without those guys. Well, it's like he's had to deal with both narratives. I actually found a quote from The Athletic where the guy, he was saying, Bill Landis said, "I thought he'd struggle some in a game without Wilson and Olave by his side. There was some sentiment that he was the benefactor of less attention with those two also on the field throughout the year." Nope. So I love that kind of the narrative has been both. It's like, he only produced because of them. He only produced because they were hurt. So I think he's just really good, and they all happen to be on the field at the same time. Now, if you look at like per game dominator rating and stuff, he wasn't as productive as Wilson and Olave. But he was also 19 years old. He was also a year younger in the program than Wilson, 2 years earlier in the program than Olave. That's, I think, extremely bullish. His 2021 is just an extremely bullish season. It was highly efficient in yards per route run. Yards after catch stuff he pops in. He wasn't being used as a gadget guy, even though he was definitely seeing like more of his production intermediate and shallow. Not necessarily going to be like a downfield deep threat guy at all. But we saw today he ran a 4.53 at his pro day. That's great. I love to see that because I don't really care that, would I love if he's 4.4? Yeah. But he's a smooth route runner who's going to be primarily like intermediate, shorter routes. He has elite agility. So I know that that's looking like it's going to translate. I just was like worried he might be like a 4.7, and then you start to think, well, is he limited now? Is he limited to like just underneath slot stuff? But he's 196, 197 at the pro day, which I kind of like. He didn't drop to like 190 to get that 40 time in. He was actually a pound heavier than he was at the combine. And hey, if he's like in the high 190s and he's 6 foot, so, he's not like a short guy, that I think tells you he can probably play on the outside enough. And what I mean by enough is that he's not leaving the field when they're in 2 wide receiver sets. So he's, his long-term NFL role is to be out there running a full slate of routes, to be a full-time wide receiver. I've comped him to CeeDee Lamb in terms of role where, Lamb played over 60% of his snaps in the slot last year. He was still out there all the time. So I don't really care if he's playing in the slot a bunch because, I'd care if he had Hunter Renfro's overall route percentage, but I don't think he will. I think he'll be a full-time guy. And, he's going to be winning with route running. I think he's going to, if he lands in a spot with a good quarterback, I think he could, even like solid quarterback play could propel him, I think, to a pretty high ceiling.
Yeah, and you mentioned the agility stuff. Amico put it in his Dynasty Outlook for him. 12th best 3-cone, 4th best shuttle time ever for a wide receiver. And that's really important. Like, not only is that a good sign in a vacuum, but as far as the draft capital goes, I think, some of the uncertainty that we're feeling as Dynasty players, there was also some of that uncertainty attached, like how our NFL team's going to feel about him. And it seems like he's pretty safe to go in the first round, possibly top half of the first round, possibly first wide receiver off of the board.
I think the 4.53 really helps there too, because it's probably like, I think he just needed to like erase major concerns. He was coming out of the combine. He was in very much in like kind of the middle of the first round discussion after that. And I think this will just ease minds.
Yeah. And I think you had, I know you mentioned the CeeDee Lamb comp, but both you and Amico in your article and Amico and his have the Justin Jefferson comp, who is a player that people came in thought was going to be a slot guy and that just is absolutely dominating. So I do think, for JSN, it seems like there's just a lot of routes to, if he's good, like it's going to work out whether he's playing heavily in the slot or has that ability to work outside. Also seen, some of the scouts have compared him to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Daniel Jeremiah made that comp. So I know things just look really, really bright for JSN. And I think he's, the clear, I think both our ETR ranks and your individual ranks, Pat, have him as the clear wide receiver 1 for Dynasty rookie drafts.
Yeah. And like Justin Jefferson is sort of a tricky comp because he's hit such a high ceiling in the NFL. So it's like, what are you really saying? But like, that was the knock on Jefferson, is that he was going to play in the slot because he played in the slot at LSU. It's also like, oh man, this other teammate he was playing with, like, might be better than him. And it's like, well, that other teammate turned out to be Jamar Chase. And we do have information now that, Olave's awesome. Garrett Wilson's awesome. Jameson Williams looks pretty good. And Jameson Williams left the program because he couldn't get on the field. He knew he wasn't going to be able to play much with those 3 guys ahead of him. And so he left, gets himself drafted with first round capital. It's just like the teammate competition stuff is actually pretty similar to Jefferson. What this guy was playing in this way in college, and therefore we're going to project him playing the same way in the pros, is similar, because like the fact that Jaxon Smith-Njigba played primarily in the slot as a 19-year-old with Wilson and Olave, I think he probably will play primarily in the slot in the NFL, but like it doesn't mean that he's definitely going to play all his snaps in the slot just because he played all his snaps in the slot with those two guys on the field with him. So yeah, I think Jefferson is an interesting comp just to kind of like expand your mind a little bit in terms of like what his NFL role might be. Because yeah, he could be Amon-Ra St. Brown, but that's not his only path. Because Amon-Ra St. Brown path is a little thin, right? It's like it's like a slot receiver who's like dominating targets and has a really low ADOT and needs a quarterback who peppers him with targets. I think that's like a live possibility for JSN, but I don't think it's his only path.
Yeah. Where do you think he goes in Superflex tight end premium drafts? There's a part of me as someone that owns a lot of picks like in the middle of the first round where I almost hope another wide receiver gets taken ahead of him just to add a little bit of uncertainty here, give him a better chance of dropping. But yeah, any thoughts on where he's going to go in terms of the market?
My guess is that Bijan's the 101, and then we get like 2.5 quarterbacks ahead of him, and you're in a kind of the average draft. And then it'll be JSN. I think he'll end up going ahead of Gibbs.
Okay.
For a while, I thought Gibbs would go ahead of him, but I feel like the market's getting a little bit nervous about Gibbs's weight. I guess it'll depend a little bit on Gibbs's landing spot. Bijan, I think he's sort of landing spot independent. He'll probably be on average the 101, no matter where he lands. But yeah, I think JSN's going to be the wide receiver 1. And I think he'll probably go behind Young, Stroud, and Richardson, but then be the 105.
Okay. Our wide receiver 2 we've got is Jordan Addison. Wasn't a great combine for Addison. He had according to playerprofiler.com, 18th percentile speed score derived from like his size and his 40 time. Bit of a small guy, but he does have a true freshman breakout season, elite 3-year production. His dominator rating year 2 was 36%, won the Blutnikoff as the best wide receiver. So we've got a mixed bag already with Jordan Addison here.
Yeah, he's tough too because he's really tiny. And like I'm saying like don't question Jaxon Smith-Njigba ceiling, but I have questioned Jordan Addison's ceiling a little bit just because he is 173. And if you're going to be over 20 pounds lighter than Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who people, I'm like pushing back on no, he's not just a slot guy, but I don't think I'd be pushing back on it if he was 173.
Right.
So I'm a little bit worried about like Addison's true, he hits, is he the wide receiver 1 on his own team, or is he more like a really high end wide receiver 2? I think Marquise Brown kind of comes to mind a little bit as a comp. He in his comp list for me, some guys pop up who have really good speed, like Jalen Waddle, Marquise Brown. We never got 40s on those guys, but I think they're clearly faster than 4.49, which is what Addison ran. Calvin Ridley is an interesting one as well. That was one that came up for me as well. So I think he's someone I'd love to see with a good quarterback, and I'm okay if he's the number 2 on his team because I think that's probably like his long-term role, that he's maybe like an Emmanuel Sanders type of guy or something like that, where he's still very productive, but he's not like a huge target hog. Maybe even kind of like a Chris Olave, where he is immediately able to win downfield. Olave was getting huge target share out of the gate, and I think that's probably too bullish for Addison. But if he's with good enough quarterback play, you don't worry about that. So I don't think the ceiling on him is like quite as high as with JSN or with Quentin Johnston, but he does feel like the type of guy who's going to fit right into an NFL offense and start producing right away. And I don't want to discount that too much. So I have him wide receiver 2 right now as well. It's very fluid with me and between him and Johnston. I think those guys are my second tier. I have them very close. And I'm like, today I almost started to like lean back towards Johnston, but right now I have Addison too.
Yeah. When I was prepping for the pod, I was kind of like, using Amico's own prospect profiles, and like I want Johnston, not Addison.
Yeah.
Like even though you've got him ranked, obviously you guys are both a little bit more in touch with the prospect, but Johnston's the big risk reward kind of swing. It seems like he has a really wide range of outcomes.
Well, if you're looking, I think in Dynasty, that kind of swing for the fences mentality will probably have Johnston ahead of Addison. But it's interesting because in best ball right now, Addison is the more expensive of the two. And Johnston I actually have quite a bit of in best ball because he tends to fall a little bit further, and he's in a range where wide receiver starts to really thin out. So, I think,
do you think that's an assumption by the market that like kind of the raw athletic guy is going to take a little bit more time than Addison, or
maybe? But I mean, Johnston is a downfield threat. Addison has done quite well. I mean, in his 2021 with Kenny Pickett, he was awesome downfield. A ton of his yards came on targets 20 plus yards downfield. So I think both guys you're hoping will be winning downfield. And so in that sense, I think they both have pretty interesting best ball profiles, and Johnston is bigger, and maybe he could kind of just get there in terms of like, yeah, he's raw, but he's scoring long touchdowns from time to time. And you're loving that at his price. So yeah, maybe, I don't know. It just feels a little bit odd to me, his best ball price, because it doesn't really reflect the probability of that he might be the first wide receiver off the board. I think maybe that took a hit after the combine, but still looking like very strong first round draft capital for Johnston. And I think he probably does still go ahead of Addison in the draft.
Yeah, using NFL mock draft database, they've got JSN 12th overall, Addison 22nd, and Johnston 16th. I was a little surprised. PFF is really high on Johnston. They have him as 9th overall. Their wide receiver 1. And yeah, the physical profile is awesome on him, right?
I'd love to see him run the 40.
Yeah. And I did have that in my notes, reading that from your article, where this is a guy that does have separation concerns. I know that's like Amico was when I first did like a first look podcast with him. I was like, oh, we're definitely gonna be lower than the market on Johnston. And that was sort of his concern, is the separation, right? Where it's like, this is he, for what he does well, which is kind of like right win at the catch point. I think his jumping metrics at the combine were really, really strong. But there's just concerns whether that's going to translate. I suppose would be the way to put it. Was that how you would put it? Those skills translate to the NFL level?
That's exactly my concern. He had a really high percentage of his targets contested, and then he actually didn't have a particularly high contested catch rate on deep targets, only 38%, which is not very good. He had 45% of his deep targets contested, which points to potential lack of separation. And that's something that like I feel like is kind of the assessment of him from the tape evaluation. You hear comps to DeAndre Hopkins, T. Higgins, and I get those when I watch him. So I don't think that's crazy. Like I think he does have a pretty high ceiling, but I also worry about, is he more, is it a little Terrace Marshall-y? Is he a guy that came up for me was Devontae Parker. And then that one's been tough. That one, like, I almost can't keep that out of my head. Like, oh God, he's Devontae Parker. Because Parker's was really good in college and like has been okay in the pros. It's not like a terrible.
He's had flashes. Yeah.
He's had flashes, but he's never really gotten there. And, his best moment was when he was with Ryan Fitzpatrick, who was like, sure, let's try it out, man. Like, I don't care that you didn't have any separation, but you kind of need a quarterback who's going to be willing to throw it up to you that way. Michael Floyd is another guy. I was looking at
God, don't bring up Michael Floyd. I mean, how much money could I lose on one player?
But I wonder if he could maybe be like a little Michael Pittman-y, although he's probably more of a downfield guy. Pittman more of an intermediate guy, but like Michael Pittman is a pretty solid outcome, but Pittman had some of the same issues where he was seeing a lot of his deep targets contested. He was better at his contested catch rate, but he wasn't awesome. And T. Higgins was awesome at contested catches. And, You look at ESPN Open Score for Higgins is not that good over the last couple of years. He's not particularly good in that metric, but he is good overall because he's really good at contested catches and he's strong at the catch point, good after the catch. So the issue for Higgins of not maybe getting a ton of separation in college, I think probably has translated. It's a weakness of his game. It's just that he's overcome it because he's a very, very strong receiver otherwise. And so that has me worried about Johnston a little bit. But the stuff that I was looking at today that had me thinking maybe I should bump him back up over Addison is he was really strong after the catch, and he was really strong after the catch as a deep threat. And that's something we see with Brandon Ayuk coming in. It's like the yards after catch guys who aren't just doing it on underneath stuff and are actually adding yards after catch downfield. That can be a really positive sign. That was a big thing. People point. Evan Silva was big on that when Brandon Ayuk was coming out, just talking about how good he was after the catch. And you'd see it. You watch the tape, and it's like we watch the highlights. Anthony Mako demands we say we watch the highlights. When you watch the highlights, you'd see Ayuk catch the ball. The defender who's covering him 25 yards downfield falls down, and then he takes it to the house. And that's the kind of yards after catch I think that's really strong. So Johnston has that. So I just think he has a really wide range of outcomes, and you want to be price conscious about how you're, where you're adding him. But I do not think you want to be out on him, and I don't think you want to be all in on him either.
Yeah, under your best ball outlook, I did like this quote you had. With a boom bust player like Johnston, there's a temptation to attempt to figure out which side of the coin he'll land on. But I think the opposite side of the approach is most profitable. It's fair to say that Johnston has a wide range of outcomes. It doesn't mean we have to take a hard stance one way or the other. He's the type of player I want to be highly price conscious on and aware of what the market is pricing in and what it is not. And I think that's really good line because truthfully, like, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, right? Like, and it's just, certain guys are different types of gambles than other guys, but essentially it's just like, what's the strength of the bet? And you're trying to make the strongest bet at whatever point you can. Just to add a couple more things to Johnston, because we did hit on kind of like the filmy tape stuff, but objectively, he'd had a huge sophomore season, 38% dominator rating, had a 2.7 receiving yards per team attempt, which is really strong. He declared after his true junior season, also, as we noted, like those true 3-year guys, historically good signs. So there are some flags, some good green flags for him. I know Miko too mentioned health concerns in college, but I feel like, I don't know, I felt like he was nitpicking there a little bit. Did you have any concerns over his health?
I haven't seen a ton of that.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I'm tempted right now to take him ahead of Addison, but those two, it seems to be like those are the next two in terms of projected draft capital. Zay Flowers is up there.
Yeah.
Mock Draft Database has him 23rd overall.
I would just encourage people, like, pick who you like between those guys. They're different profiles. So if like you're more into, if you're trying to like hit on a, solid, really strong, like kind of
sounds boring already. Already fell asleep.
Or do you want to hit a home run? Yeah, I don't care. You strike out. Yeah. he might be Denzel Mims. I don't care. I'm taking him. Then you go with Johnston because he could be Nuke. He could be the next Nuke.
I've won a DFS tournament with Denzel Mims. I'm on board. Let's go. Zay Flowers out of Boston College. He is a 4-year guy, which is generally not good. The size also a little bit of a concern for him. 5'9", 182. But the college production, Pat, is pretty strong for him. Dominator ratings the last 3 years of 34%, 36%, and 47%. All strong signs for Zay Flowers. Had 15% of his team's touches in his last season. Guy that carried the ball as well. 57 career carries to go with 200 career receptions. I know Amico's kind of PCA analysis, which is like looks at a few different metrics, warped, has him comp to T.Y. Hilton, and heard some scouts, Daniel Jeremiah included, comping him to T.Y. Hilton. How do you feel about Zay Flowers?
Zay Flowers, I think in like the classes that we've had recently, I'd be like kind of down on, because I'd want to take some of these higher upside shots. But in this class, I kind of like him. I ended up bumping him up to wide receiver 4. Just feeling like, yeah, he's not a perfect prospect. He's a 4-year guy, but man, he was really productive in that final season. And that is generally the profile we like is that if you're going to play all 4 years, be super productive in your final year, be really productive overall. He broke out as a sophomore, 34% dominator rating. He was really productive over the course of his entire career with 29% career yardage share, 33% career dominator rating. So, yeah, I mean, you do have a preference for the 3-year guys generally, but he still looks like a pretty strong prospect. To me, a couple of guys came up, like Kendall Wright came up for me, which is like one of those comps that's like, oh, man. But he had 1,000 yards as a second-year player. Will Fuller came up.
Just ask Soccer Dave.
Michael Floyd actually came up for him too, although although Floyd had 1,000 yards in his second year. He's a 4-year guy, Floyd, much bigger than Flowers, but Flowers was a downfield player. It'll probably be more, I would say, like of an intermediate type of guy in the NFL, but he actually did a lot of his damage downfield at Boston College. I think the issue for him is, at his size and at sufficient athleticism, but not great athleticism, like what's he actually going to translate to in the pros? And he might just be kind of more of like shallow intermediate stuff. If he lands in a spot where he has a chance to see a ton of targets, I think he'd be pretty interesting. But he just feels like, one of these guys who's probably going to be like okay for, a few seasons and not someone I'm all that excited about. I'm actually more interested in him in best ball than Dynasty, because I don't even know if the resale value is going to be like super high on him. But yeah, it could be kind of a Kendall Wright type of ride.
The last 2 wide receivers that we have ranked in the first round of Superflex Tight End Premium rookie drafts are Josh Downs and Jalin Hyatt. Though I talked with Miko this morning, we're tempted to move Hyatt down a little bit. The draft capital for both these guys right now looks like maybe early second round. Miko notes that Downs, like similar profile to Addison, actually has better athletic testing and was a true freshman breakout. With Hyatt, this guy's a burner, but he's pretty small, pretty thin, at least. A 3-year player. He didn't break out until year 3, but put up a huge line in year 3, 67 catches for almost 1,300 yards and 15 touchdowns. I did notice how PFF's like really high on Quentin Johnston. They're really low on Jalin Hyatt. They have him like most of the wide receivers we have ranked are like somewhat in line with their big board, and they have Hyatt as a 3rd rounder, like in the 70s. So there's some pessimism from them there. I kind of read him as someone that could be better in real life than like in fantasy, where you get some of these field stretchers that when you look at the on-off splits for the offense, they help the offense a ton, but they don't necessarily command the necessary volume. How are you looking at Downs and Hyatt?
Yeah, Hyatt's someone like that. One of the reasons that Flowers is now my wide receiver 4 is because I dug more into Hyatt. He's got a couple major red flags for me. One is that he played out of the slot like a lot. And yeah, like he only played, I don't have it here for some reason, but he was at like in the teens in terms of his snaps out wide. So that's like definitely a concern, given that he actually projects as an outside downfield receiver. And the other thing, is that like he's probably a little raw as like a route runner. He 26% of his career yards came from go routes, which is a pretty high rate. So it's not like the highest in the class, actually. Quentin Johnston was at 30%. But like Zay Flowers is the next highest among the top receivers at just 10%. So it concerns me a bit, because you have this like double whammy of the guy's going to have to transfer to the outside, which isn't where he played. And then he's going to have to be, running these like probably like a pretty limited route tree. And then he also isn't that fast. Like obviously he's
right.
4.4 is fast, but he's not a 4.25. He's not Tyquan Thornton.
Yeah, I know Amika, like to your point about how he was like playing the slot, when we were going back and forth this morning, he was saying how it was a little bit of a gimmicky offense where like he got schemed open against the interior defenders and was able to, utilize his speed in those matchups. But yeah, you were kind of hoping better for 4-4 for like what his strong suit is.
For sure. And then you also you worry about the size because he can be able to play outside against, NFL corners. By the way, yeah, he had 12% of his snaps out wide last year, 87% in the slot, 89% of his career snaps came in the slot. So, yeah, and when you're talking about Hyatt, like he's in the 170s in terms of weight, 176 in terms of his weight. He's 6 feet, 176. Like, if it doesn't have elite speed at that size, and having to kind of like play not exactly a different position, but he's going to have to, learn some new stuff to be on the outside. It just all feels like pretty thin to me. I mean, he is a 3-year player who broke out. He had a really strong final season. So there are definitely some things to like. He could still sneak into the back end of the first round. So I don't want to like write him off, but it just like makes me nervous. And then his comps also came in for me like horrifying. Let me pull up his comps here because they were like literally about as
As bad as he can be,
fear inducing as you can get. Yeah, Corey Coleman was his top.
We had him as comp as someone else. I was thinking like, here's another guy I don't want you to bring up to give me nightmares, and here we are.
Justin Hunter, who is taller and bigger, but had the same BMI. They have the exact same BMI. Both went to Tennessee.
Listen,
both downfield guys.
It's so funny. So many of these guys are the guys that like we used to love, and then we like learned a little bit more. And the NFL changed a little bit, but there were some Tyrod Taylor to Justin Hunter touchdowns in my memory. So
yeah. Nelson Aguilar, another one, another first round pick. These are fair comps. John Ross, another guy who actually did have the elite speed and went much higher. So if anyway, in some ways that's like an unfair comp to Ross.
Which isn't super promising.
Yeah. But I don't know. Look, I mean, he's got, I think, sufficient speed to where if he turns out to be like a better route runner than I think he probably is right now. He's a 3-year guy who runs 4.4 and won downfield in college. So I don't want to, I just like keep an open mind, but he's definitely like a very boom bust type of bet.
Yeah. So do you have Downs ahead of him?
I don't really like Downs. Downs is just so small. And yeah, he did break out as a freshman, but I believe he had 7 receptions that year. So I'm not.
Oh, okay. So yeah,
I'm not counting that. Yeah, but he was very productive all 3 seasons. He had 31% dominator rating, but only in 4 games and 7 receptions. Then the following year, he had 101 receptions, 1,335 yards, and 36% dominator rating, and then 34% as a true junior. So, the freshman thing I'm poking holes in, but it's fair to say anytime he was out there, he was producing at a breakout level. So you do really like to see that. But 171, he's 5'9". Some of the stuff, like you look at like where his yards after catch are coming from, it is kind of gadgety. That's a red flag that popped up with him for me. So he's someone that I'm like, he kind of projects as more of like truly like kind of an underneath slot guy at that weight and kind of his college production profile, like how the yards were coming.
Yeah. So like, where do you have these? So it's a decent tight end class. Do you have these guys back in around 1 still ahead of the tight ends, or would you take like some of the tight ends, particularly Mayer, ahead of Downs and Hyatt?
I think right now you can, if you want to bet on draft position and, hope one of these guys lands in a really good spot, I think taking them ahead of the tight ends is fine. My guess is that post-draft, I'll have a couple of these tight ends firmly ahead of like Hyatt and Downs because I think this is a really good tight end class. Right now, I've got only Mayer ahead of Downs and Hyatt, but I have Downs in the same tier as all the other tight ends like the Laporta, Kincaid, Washington, Musgrave. I've got him in the same tier. I have Hyatt in a tier above, but I think I'm going to probably change that. He's just making me pretty nervous. But Hyatt, my thing with Hyatt is Hyatt could go in the first round. Hyatt could go at the end of the first round and get a great quarterback. And at that point, like, I think I'm okay. Like,
take your chances.
Yeah, like Philip Dorsett with Josh Allen might have worked out, you know? So, but yeah, so I think that right now I feel like I'm still taking Hyatt because the chance for really strong draft capital is there. Downs, I could go either way. I have him ranked ahead of the tight ends, non-Mayor tight ends right now, but it wouldn't bother me at all if you prefer like Kincaid over Downs.
Cool. Yeah, so that wraps up our ETR ranked round 1 wide receivers and Superflex tight end premium drafts. Anybody else that you find yourself drafting or you want to talk about just thinks a good value maybe in best ball drafts?
The only guy that I'm prioritizing right now is Marvin Mims. He was a 3-year player as well. He doesn't like check the boxes in the same way as Downs because he never had a true breakout season. His peak dominated rating was 27%, but he did have a 24% dominated rating as a true freshman, 610 yards in 11 games there. He had 9 touchdowns as a freshman, 30% touchdown share. And then as a junior, he had 33% yardage share, didn't have the touchdowns in that year, only 22%. But he's done both. He never put them together in the same year. So peak dominated rating of 27%, didn't technically break out. But he was very athletic at the combine, 4.38. I think probably sufficient size, 5'11", 183, 4.38. That's like a Garrett Wilson type of, size speed type of profile. 39.5-inch vertical, 129-inch broad jump, 6.93 cone. So he looks like someone who really helped himself at the combine. We probably are seeing day 2 draft capital now. I would hope. I'm not like going all in on him because maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe he's a day 3 guy, and draft capital I think is just so important at the wide receiver position. We've seen some guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Stephon Diggs overcome it. Antonio Brown, although it took him a few years, so especially for best ball stuff, I think you really do want to see day 2 draft capital come in, but chances of that happening are much stronger post-combine now. He was very efficient in his career, good yards per route run. He was a downfield producer. He's playing his entire rookie season at 21 years old. So in addition to the early declare, we also have the youth on his side. I think he's probably going to be kind of a boom bust type of guy too. Like De'Ami Brown comes up as a comp. Anthony Schwartz comes up as a comp. So he's not someone that could, he's far from a guarantee, but you're getting him a lot cheaper than Hyatt and a lot cheaper than Downs. And I think like if I knew the draft capital was the same, I'd probably prefer Mims to those guys, but I just don't know what the NFL is ultimately going to feel about him. So, but he, I think, is pretty strong like sleeper type.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Pat. Why don't you tell the people where they can find you this offseason?
Yeah, Legendary Upside. Check it out. As I mentioned, 30-day trial, $30 off right now on yearly subscriptions as well. If you sign up for the trial, I'll also just add the yearly subscription discount to your account. So, there's no risk. Hey. Yeah, pretty good. Also, check out Chip Chasing. We're going to be on tonight doing a draft. We're going to be doing some Dynasty content next week. And ADP Chasing is a show that Sam Sherman's been hosting on Fridays. We'll be doing that again Friday at 1, looking at the best ball market. That's been a lot of fun. He makes some really cool charts to help kind of keep track of player movement in these best ball drafts. So if you're drafting right now, highly recommend ADP Chasing.
Awesome. Yeah. And make sure you're checking out all the stuff over on ETR. I referenced a ton of Anthony Amico's work, who kind of leads up our Dynasty content over here at Establish the Run. If you're listening to the podcast, rate, review us on iTunes, give us a thumbs up, subscribe on YouTube for the Establish the Run YouTube channel. Helps a ton. Appreciate it. Best of luck, everybody, in their best ball and Dynasty drafts this offseason.